Teaching a living composer music whom you knew as a student, in my case, Henri Dutilleux, for his piano sonata, now that he's recently, alas, deceased, is such a travel in time, because the piece exists on its own, written already in the 40s, for Geneviève Joie, his wife, who was my chamber music teacher. And they had an apartment in Paris next to Notre Dame with two separate entrances, calling each other always in front of us by their last names. And had an incredible independent artistic life each. And I studied with both. And till the end, very late in his mid-90s, I visited Henri Dutilleux, his house, apartment in question, presenting him my, at the time, teenager daughter, who was already studying the flute, and asking him why he wrote the sonata in F-sharp minor back in the 40s, as if there was any reason a composer should give me that answer, because, of course, I cannot ask it of Beethoven. And it was an opportunity. And I told him it's a silly thing to ask, but since I was familiar with him since the years, I allowed myself such a silly question. And it was really cute, actually, of him, because he said, I don't remember, but I think I was quoting something for which the sonata is in F-sharp minor. And but he didn't remember what, since it was half a century ago for him then, and he was so old. And he held the hands of my daughter and taught her serve music always honestly, because he believed in music honestly. So honest was he that he recomposed most of his works when he was unsatisfied with them, even after 3 years of a violin concerto for Isaac Stern in the late 20th century. And then rewriting it for another few years, unsatisfied at the very rehearsal of the premiere after the commission's years passed. And he told me, I want to leave after me only works that are worth something. And he was a little bit upset, or appeared to be, that I still teach his piano sonata, because, of course, it's published beautiful and beloved by so many and played for many competitions, mostly the last movement, chorale and variations, but the whole piece is based in F-sharp minor on a minor descending third. And I was teaching a few months later in Bloomington here, Brahms' sonata for violin and piano, which scherzo in F-sharp minor has a descending third. And his sonata is. So I asked him, could it be, I called him actually, having made this connection after he mentioned that it was a possible quotation of a piece that he forgot which one it might have been, justifying the F-sharp minor tonality of his sonata. And he said yes, because Geneviève Joie, his wife, at the time he was dating, they were both students at the Conservatoire in the 40s in Paris. She had a partner with whom she played violin and piano sonatas. Michel Auclair was her name. And they were playing this Brahms sonata, or practicing, rehearsing it, while he was composing his sonata for her. So I was really... it was a tender moment to have noticed by assumption of ideas that this might have been the reason. Not necessarily, but one cause for the F-sharp minor. I mean, a pianist or composer for piano doesn't have a specific reason to write it in a specific key, because it's a chromatic instrument, can be played in any key. It's not like the clarinet in B flat or anything like that. So it was touching. And so now that he's passed, and that she died even before him, alas, and they both are gone. I cannot call them anymore, as I used to, from Bloomington, teaching about his sonata for details of some misprints in the edition. And he used to say, don't teach my sonata, it's not a good piece, I'm not satisfied, I should have written better for piano. Quote him. And I said, but we love your piece, and I love it, and it's a wonderful piece. Besides, it's published, so if it's open to everybody to play, even I knew, as I told you, that he was a very respecting the tradition of the artists who only want to leave the best after them to be played. And so he was a little disappointed, but he appeared to agree that, yeah, it's published, so it can be played. And so even now, when I teach it, after he died, and I knew him personally, musically, humanly, philosophically, his influences, it's a very special moment to travel in time. And so with the upcoming generation now of students who come and play him, they play his music like they play Beethoven, because it's just music on the paper. It's not a human in person. It's the oeuvre, the work, the production. And I find it very touching because, of course, I can connect to the personal anecdotes that I know with him, but I avoid going too much into it because I think it's the work itself that he would have liked us to work on, and not the connection to the person. And sometimes it's difficult to make the separation. My teacher was a student of Fauré, and she didn't tell me anecdotes about Fauré and how he was this and that at a lesson, or he taught her this, or he brought her there, or whatever. And Debussy, who was very close friend, as well as Ravel, who was co-student at Fauré's class. And she would tell me things about how Ravel premiered his, unofficially in class, played for the first time his newly written Jeu d'eau when Fauré was the teacher and she was a young girl student and he was a young man. And she said Ravel played it, and Fauré said after the performance of the piece, which he heard for the first time, having just written it, that we should not hear another piece before the end of the class, so I can keep it in my ear until I go to bed, because he liked it so much. So that was a cute anecdote that she said about Fauré saying this because of a piece in class, but not something personal, really. And I found it also very respectful that the work is the work and the composer or the artist is the human, and they're two separate entities, even if there were one in their lifetime. And I noticed that when I teach music of people I knew, compared to people, of course, I will never have known, like Beethoven. Of course, in the course of a lifetime of a musician, we end up thinking we have a connection with them, as if we discuss with them in an imaginary dialogue. Why did you write this note and not this? Because logically this, but their logic is not ours, and we couldn't second guess them because they heard something before we could have heard it. And that's why they are the artists and the creators. And so we try to play them, to understand, to guess, to misguess, to hope to understand, if not to enter in their universe, in their musical language, in their realm of being. And I was asked a few years ago, already 40 years ago, to record the Glenn Gould piano sonata out of sketches he left when he was 18, never completed. He died at 50. His publisher of record label asked me to complete it in order to publish it. But I told him, what if he didn't want it to be played, less completed by some stranger whom he never knew, since I never had the chance to meet Gould. And anyway, he didn't compose beyond these sketches. He was planning, according to what I understand, to compose later, but he stopped concertizing at 30. He wanted to stop recording at 50, which he did profusely, and then perhaps reconnect to composition. Who knows? That will be an unknown. But given that I was given this task to make a reconstitution, I entered in his thinking and I started guessing what he would have developed the theme like. And perhaps that is a logic he wouldn't have used. After all, that's why composers are not us and we are not them. But when we serve them, we feel like we are in symbiosis with them, which is a nice feeling. Not that we appropriate ourselves to be them, but anyway, but when we really knew them and we teach their music, oh my God, it's so special. So I wanted to share that with you. Thank you.